Sanam. This time out, we're going to explore the classic Kundalini yoga favorite, the spinal flex, also known as camel ride. It's done almost in every class as sometimes the warm-up. It's often part of a kriya. I can't remember the last time I didn't teach it as part of the warm-up. So it really deserves a deeper exploration. I personally practice this every night before bed, and I'll show you why. I find it quite relaxing if you do it at a moderate pace. So first thing for spinal flexes is you have to decide what is the comfortable sitting posture for you. Is it right leg in front? Is it a closed version of Sukhasana, the comfortable seat of ease? Or maybe you're better suited for a little wider. You know, it does create a slightly different version of it, but it's very slight, so I will leave that for you. Again, if you require some lift because your hips haven't yet opened up enough to support this without, you put something under those sit bones, and it's going to put you in a much more advantageous position. If you don't need it, great. But if you do, don't hesitate, and you'll decide whether you need a higher or lower lift, okay? But for our purposes, I'm going to pull it aside. And before we add a breath to this, because pretty much every posture we're going to explore is going to have a breath. But the first thing is this rocking. Now, this is so essential to not just the spinal flex, but you're going to see it's in so many, many asanas. So to be able to do this correctly is very important. Okay, what that actually means is you're on your sits bones and you're rocking from the back of them up to the top and even to the front. Okay, now in order to do that correctly, you have to learn how to engage your lower core muscles. Now really this is the domain of the intelligent navel. So it's actually under your belly button. And for now, we're going to just focus on the under the belly button. It's like halfway between your belly button and your pubic bone. We learn to use that. Now imagine, I'm going to go from the side, so you can see this better. If you're going to start here, okay? This is to the back of the sits bones. What you want to do is you want to be able to root downward, come up, and in front. So in order to do that, you're going to have to engage those pelvic and lower navel core muscles. Okay? Now, as an exploration, we're going to exaggerate this. I've heard it taught where you can imagine, at least, that your sits bones are being drawn into each other. Well, they don't move, but you can pretend. That will give you a sense of that, because we don't want to get in the habit of pulling forward, head leading the heart, which you'll hear me mention again and again. Head follows heart. And for this, it's nice to take your hands away for learning this. Engage downward, this will come up and a little bit forward. To come back, you were going to roll off. Now this can get very smooth, but when you're first learning it, I like the idea of exaggeration. So I'm going to show you from a few different angles. And again, for the moment, I'm not going to have you do this. And I'm not even going to have you put a breath just yet. So you're going to engage downward, and this comes up. And then roll back. And this, wherever we are in the spinal flex, this is what's going to carry this. And for me, it's all about moving the heart smoothly. So whether it's quick, with a quick breath, or whether it's slower, it's all about gaining smoothness. So a part of this is learning to listen to your breath, meaning you want to do this as close to an inhale moving at the same speed with an exhale. So what we don't want is inhale fast, exhale slow. So start off at a slower pace. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is we're just going to focus right now on the lower spine. So I'm going to hold on here, okay? And what I'll do is, as I engage downward, I'm actually going to use this grip and my arms and shoulders to help bring the heart up and through. But again, your heart is actually being carried and supported by this pelvis. So we don't try to pull our heart through. We try to come up and through on the sit bones, which gives us so much extra space for this to come through, which also makes it easier and more spacious to put a breath with. On the way back on the exhale, you've got to roll back on the pelvis, up and over off the sits bones and back down. And it done slowly, it'll be this. Inhale and exhale. And again, there's this inhale moving down from the heart, opening this up. Since we're grabbing here and we're not doing it with a full inhale, we can just focus on this part of us. Again, from the side, it's going to look like this. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Very exaggerated, looks like this. Inhale, exhale, done slowly. Inhale, exhale. You might even find this helpful to practice this slow and exaggerated. I do. But smoothing it out, it will become inhale, exhale, sat, nam. That's just our guiding mantra. Inhale, exhale, through the nose. And if I'm listening carefully, I realize I'm following my breath, and my breath on the inhale and the exhale are moving about the same speed. Okay, now moving into a more full-bodied spinal flex requires a bigger breath, because in order for us to move further into the chest while following the breath, it'll take more time for the inhale and exhale to move in and out of you. And there's some techniques for this too, because once you're here, if you want your spine to have the space to extend further, there's some tricks that you'll find helpful. So what I will do with that, at this point, I'm going to actually take my shoulders, draw them back a little bit, and try to at least imagine that my 11th thoracic rib is expanding me out in this direction, and that 12th rib's already helping your back open up that way. So what we'll get is this. Same beginning. Inhale, this comes up, but at that point I can take my shoulder blades, scapulas back, and I got the room now for this to come forward. Okay, so inhale, and rolling back off the pelvis, exhale. Inhale, my head is just going to float. That's why they call it the camel ride. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. But the main power of it is actually happening here. Again, it's creating the opportunity to use the space through my shoulders, which then I can expand the chest further. This is going to be a common theme in many, many of the asanas we're going to explore. How to get the chest to open in order to get your shoulders in a better place, to get the breath to move higher up into the lungs with these various shapes and forms. So this is sort of almost the full spinal flex like this. Inhale, exhale. But I encourage you just to practice again, just your lower spine, where you have a sense that inhale is moving down on the inhale and up. Again, with this one, it goes down on the inhale, but then it goes out. Down, out, inhale. Pelvis goes back, in, and goes back up. Okay. Now there's a third one in the sitting version, which is done quite slowly in comparison. And this is where we're going to bring air all the way up into the upper parts of our lungs. In order to do that, we have to create space for it to get there. And so that will require the use of some other muscles. Okay, so I'm going to start the same though. I've got my hands here. Going to engage downward. Going to come a little forward. This is open. This is open. But since I want to move this up at the very end, I'm going to have to engage a lot more in here. You notice I'm drawing this in, because otherwise I won't be able to create the space up here. These are our, this area is already open and full. Up in here is yet. So that's the very end of this inhale. I have no more room. Okay? After you've inhaled all the way up, and it becomes difficult to speak with that much air in your lungs, same thing. You begin the return home by starting to roll off the sits bones. The exhale leaves here. It starts to relax and moves in here. And then finally, if you take it all the way back down, you can exhale here. That's the finishing exhale. Okay? Here it is again. Inhale. And you may be noticing that I'm actually beginning to engage a bit of what's called Jalandhara-bandh. They call the neck lock, or I like to think of it as the gate. Gates open under pressure. You're not being locked out. You're using pressure to open something. Different translations, whether you use the word lock or gate, or just the classic Sanskrit, Jalandhara-bandh, Mula-bandha, and we'll talk later about Uddiyana-bandha. Here, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Now there are some variations, and I'll share what actually I like to practice, where you actually don't go to Jalandhara-bandh. You actually inhale, draw the shoulder blades back, and at the very end you can lengthen your neck and look up. On the way down, begin by moving off the sits bones to the back of them, then your head can come back. Inhale, heart lifts, neck lengthens. You can put your head back. You can exaggerate this part at the end of the exhale too. But get your basics first, okay? Get your basics. Satnam.